And I think that you should be able to share your screen if you need to.
Got it. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to those of you that are just jumping on as well. Helen and I have put together a few slides just to kind of help center our conversation. We really want to be thinking about how we, all of you as special educators, can be supporting your students that are currently at home, and around what are the types of positive behavior supports that can be moved into the home or shared with parents. So I was going to go ahead and jump in and start. Helen, do you want to, while I'm fumbling around for my...
Well, I'll tell them the structure. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay, so Karen and I actually, and it says right on the slides, we adapted these from a longer presentation that someone was generous enough to share with us. And so Karen's really going to walk us through the content, and then I'll just share a couple resources at the end. And then I put some questions for discussion, but one of the questions is open discussion. So, you know, we're open at the end.
Absolutely. All right. Can everybody see the slides now? Are we set?
Very nice.
All right, good. Okay. So, all right. The first thing that I think is really important, and as we share this with others, is that we all make sure that we take the time right now to pay attention to our own well-being. I was just on an interesting call with some others today and saying how, as educators, we need to be making sure that we are, first of all, giving ourselves some grace and acknowledgement for the great work that everybody is doing, because nobody's done this before. This is brand new and we're all trying to figure it out. So I think it's really important to take a moment to take those deep breaths and know that we're not alone, and the decisions that we all are making right now don't have to be the decisions that are made forever. Helen, I added this at the very last minute, but I wanted to let
I
what's that?
pulled it up on my computer as well.
Okay, good. I realized we should have had that from the start. If you are not already familiar with the PBIS Technical Assistance Center, I highly encourage you to jump over to their website. On a dime, they turned out multiple resources that can be used to help during this really challenging time, and they're all really simple, easy to follow resources. I know several of my friends that are working and doing remote instruction right now turned to the Creating a PBIS Behavior Teaching Matrix for Remote Instruction resource and figured out how to use that right away. So I wanted to share those, and Helen's going to talk a little more depth about the one with families at home later. So basically, we wanted to walk you through the idea of what can we be telling our families that they can do to help those kiddos, especially those with some really challenging behaviors, what are some simple things that they can do at home to make that connection between school and home seem a little bit more real for their students. I don't know about many of you, but I have a close friend of mine whose son has autism, and one of the biggest challenges that they're encountering right now is that thinking like, I'm at home, I'm not supposed to be doing school.
Yeah.
Like, I do school only at school.
Yes.
Right? So I've been working with her on trying to help figure out ways to bridge that and help to make that a little more fluid. So some things we want to talk about. The first one is families are in brand new circumstances. with that comes a whole lot of uncertainty and a whole lot of unknowns. The more structure that we can provide to help with that, the better. So a great idea would be to take school-wide expectations, if they have them in their schools, and apply them at home. So what does it look like to be respectful at bedtime? And how are we safe in the basement, right? What do I need to do to be responsible at dinner time? And really take the time with our children at home to structure that, figure these out together so that everybody's on the same page. I love this one example too, because it also puts that adult role right in there. And it helps with children to buy in if they know, look, as a mom, there are things I'm required to do too, and the expectations I have to meet as well. My own children keep saying, you know, yeah, you do have to actually provide dinner every night. I'm like, what? I'm not used to us being home all the time. Like, it's time to make dinner again, right? So I think that having those expectations really clear for everyone, it just takes that ambiguity away. Here's another great example, just, you know, slightly different, but again, making it match the context of your students' families based upon how they live their lives and days. Another one is to make sure that we're setting up really clear routines, right? It's really hard to do that right now when everybody has no idea what each day is about to bring. And then it just seems to keep changing on people. So what are the best routines, and helping kids to understand what that looks like and give them something to structure their days. It's also really important for all children, but to help parents to understand that is a whole other story. How do we teach expectations explicitly and not just assume that they're all known? So maybe some of your students could benefit from some visual aids that you put together and send home and have them print them at home. As special educators, I'm sure you're all really aware of how important all those explicit instructions are, but helping parents to understand that is a totally different dynamic. So are there things that we can do to make sure that we're providing them with samples? Again, another friend of mine, I know she's a special educator to some kids with really significant needs, and she actually printed some of these off and mailed them to families at home and asked them to use them. Yeah. So just some ideas and thoughts. Having having ways that kids are reminded of the expectations. I love this one over here on, well, yeah, on your left, of my Zoom rules. And they, you know, I'm listening to my own children who are 15 or I'm sorry, 16. And I should know that. They're driving, so 16. But being in a classroom virtually is so different than what it's like in reality, right? So what are the things that we can do to help make it really clear of what they're supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be behaving? So having something right where they are working might be really helpful. And then I think it's so important for parents to remember the importance of acknowledging, reinforcing when their kids are doing things the right way. But parents may not even know how important that is, or that they're not doing it. So again, the more we can just reinforce and encourage parents to do it, the better. And if we can give them those supports, give them a list like the one that's on here, and say, try checking off a couple of these each day, right? Explaining about that magic ratio of 5 positives to 1 negative. We know that when we hear far more positive responses and acknowledgments to our behavior, we're far more likely to maintain that behavior and sustain it over time than if we're corrected all the time. However, when we're stressed, when we're on a heavy cognitive load, it's really easy for us to fall back onto our fallback default of recognizing every time somebody's doing something wrong, right? And I know myself as a parent, I preach this, but I don't always follow it nearly as well as I wish I would. So there are times I literally will put little Post-its up that say 5 to 1, 5 to 1, 5 to 1, to remind myself, because it's hard. And I also think a great tool is to talk with parents about behavior-specific praise. Now, all of you as educators probably have this in your toolbox, but whether or not parents do is a totally different story. So it might make sense to spend some time actually talking with parents on those Zoom meetings as well, around doing some role playing of how we provide specific praise to students, or to children, to our spouses, to everybody around us, right? Again, one of those things that's really easy to talk about, another thing to put into practice. And I also have seen a lot of success with providing acknowledgement systems at home, especially for our students that are really having challenges with behavior or lack of motivation. This is hard. This whole process of moving into learning from home is beyond hard. Whenever we are presented with something that's really hard, the more that we can do to reinforce ourselves, the better. So what can we do as parents and teachers to support our students and reinforce them? There's a wealth of different things online. These are just a few examples. And then the part that I think is hardest for all parents is that modeling of expectations, right? That's where we do as I say, not as I do, right? We don't want to be doing that. And yet every parent that I talk to is maxed out right now. So what are some things that we can share with parents so that they can turn around and take care of themselves, so that they can be available to their children, or different perspectives to look at? You know, for example, this one with the iceberg here, and I apologize, it's an image I pulled offline, and I know that the COVID is spelled incorrectly on there, but as a parent of teens, I know that right now we are we're taking away their lifeline because they can't be with their peers right now. So while what we might be seeing on the outside is that defiance, tons of time on screens, and it may be something we want to push back against, what are the things that we need to be aware of that might actually be going on for them? Are they worried about their social status with their peers because they're not with them? Are they overwhelmed with school and trying to navigate that, and the worry about, well, what if I don't pass it, but I don't see my teacher, so how do I know if I'm doing what I need to do? All the things that they know have been taken away. So again, these I think are just really great tools and resources to share with families. And when we're all done today, I'm more than happy to send out this whole set of slides so that you have them and you can give them to your families that you work with as well. And then I'm going to pass it over to Helen.
I was muted, sorry.
There.
Yeah, so I am really just wanted to follow up on a couple of things Karen said and then share these resources. I don't want to say a whole lot.
Sorry.
Sorry, what?
I hit the wrong button and I pushed the slide forward on you.
Oh, got it. Okay. So this resource right here actually is, Karen showed you the website earlier. There's 4 resources that look very similar, and this is about supporting families at home. We had a slide earlier that was about routines and expectations, and it was one side was for elementary level and one side was for secondary level, and I just really loved that. So that's why I put it in there, because I felt like it was looking at kids at different levels or different ages. So I don't have a whole lot to say about this because I think a lot of it's just visual examples. So I highly recommend going to this website. So you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So this was a webinar actually that I attended. I don't know if anybody else attended it about a week or so ago. I went to the one on top called Talking to Kids About Changing Schedules, Altered Plans, and Disruption. And that webinar and the ones below it are all free at this time. I think the Autism Research Institute, because it's COVID time, is providing these free resources. And one of the things, the main nugget that I got from that website with that webinar was about social stories. And so a couple people started talking about social stories as a support and as a strategy. And then the organizer said, well, actually, we have social stories examples on this website. So if you go to the autism.org/the COVID-19 resources, there are the social stories that we have listed here. And then the other webinars I think have not happened yet. So you may want to check out this website to see if there's webinars that would be useful to you or the families that you're working with. And
I think too, when I looked, some of them were pre-recorded ones, and then there are others that you could sign up for.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just know the one I went to was happening right then, but I think they probably did put them all up there, and then there are some previous ones that are pre-recorded. You're right. Yeah, which might be better time-wise too, if you see it when it's recorded. And just one of the things Karen just said is that I just wrote down a quote that Karen's taking notes when she was talking. And you said, all the things that they know have been taken away for children, and that was really I would say the main theme of this top webinar that I went to. If you said, what was that webinar about in one sentence, that's what it was about. And so it was providing support and explanations because all of the things that they know about have been taken away. So I thought that was really important what you said, Karen. And then the next slide, and then we're just about ready for discussion. So this is just a list of wonderful resources that honestly I didn't put together. Karen put together with her colleague who shared some of the slides with us, but there are a lot of good, the Affirm modules, or a ton of modules about autism in particular. And then the other ones have a range of resources. There's a YouTube video. The next one, the Incredible 5-Point Scale, is actually a whole bunch of modules as well. So there's a lot of good resources there, and we will be sharing this. So that's good. You can take a look yourself. And then I just came up with some questions on the next slide. I think the next slide. We don't have to discuss any of these, or we can discuss whichever ones you want, but I just thought we've put a couple, we've put some materials up here. Karen has shared some ideas. And I was wondering if there are good tips that you have for us or for each other for helping structure students' days at home. I missed the words at home that we didn't mention. What are some things that you could share? What are some common challenges that your students and families are expressing? And that's one thing also that Karen talked about, and a family that I've been working with in Maine right now, near Farmington, is struggling because they're not used to being the teacher all day. They're used to send you to school at 7:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, and then pick you back up at 3 or whatever. So that has been a real challenge, like Karen is saying, to be like, oh, wait, I'm the one that's supposed to be teaching now? And this is a family that actually doesn't speak English very well. So that on top of everything, that has been very challenging for them. So that was another question I thought of. And then I was wondering if anything on here you felt like was especially relevant to specific challenges your students or your students' families are facing. So overall, it's just a way to take what we just talked about and add to it, expand on it, edit it, based on what you all are working with. I don't know if, given that a lot of you are at universities, but certainly Beth, I know, talked about working currently with children, and their families. So I think Karen, right? We want to open it up to discussion now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The teacher's lounge.
That's right.
So I know that Allison and Laura are in schools. I know Tara is in VZ. Noraline, I'm not sure where you are. Could you remind us? I think you're all muted too.
I've actually been retired for 4 years, but I have been subbing as a speech pathologist in a local school district since March.
Okay.
So I have kindergarten.
What a time to start.
Students. Yeah, I was in school for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yikes.
Well, what are some tips that you all have that are helping provide structure either to your instruction or to the children in your homes?
I have a daily Zoom meeting with, I'm a life skills teacher, elementary school life skills teacher down in Belfast area. And I have a group of kindergartners and I have a group of fourth graders. So I have a very, they're very different. And I tried to have like a meeting together one day, one of the first ones that I had, and I noticed the divide very distinctly, more distinctly than in real life. So what I've done is I have a morning session with my younger crew and I have an afternoon session with my older crew so that we do different things. My morning crew is a calendar kind of more social time, and my afternoon crew, we worked on a State of Maine project this week. But I think that the consistency of having a time that we can meet together, I'm not completely focused on academics because I think that at this point more pressing is the social emotional part of it, because the student that I struggle with the most has dropped off with being engaged with us. He's a kindergarten student. And
that's tough.
And I think that perhaps, it's kind of a curious way to look at it, but perhaps he's very concrete so that I think, is seeing us on the video and understanding that we're at home, but not having those language skills and that pragmatic part of it to be able to really have someone explain it to him enough that he can understand, because he sees us, but it's like, this isn't the way it should be. I go to school, I'm at school, I see these people, I'm not at home, we don't ever do it on the video, and it almost seems like it's making it worse to have a Zoom meeting.
Oh, like it's becoming a behavioral trigger, you mean?
Because he spins and you can just see him expressing like what I can see on the camera in his living room. I can just see him being so dysregulated that it's like, is this benefiting him? And as time goes on, his guardian is starting to say, like, being more frustrated with him, that he's not sitting because she's watching other kids just basically engage with us, and he's spinning in the living room. And it's like, I mean, the thought was is to write a social story about it, but the thing is I don't know how. Like,
Helen, do you have any ideas? I could see you're getting ready to say something.
I always have questions. I was telling Karen, I always have hundreds of questions. So I'll come back with a question. I'm curious, does he have one-on-one time with you on Zoom, or do you meet with the family afterwards, or how does that,
I had been having one-on-one time with him, but it ended up being that he wasn't engaged with him. But when he was joining a group of students at a different time, he was more engaged. So my thought is perhaps bring some students in, and then maybe he'd be more apt to engage but I don't think a social story is really going to be the answer, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
much more complicated than just put a social story there and it'll be better. I think that there's some understanding, some language barriers,
lots of layers. Yeah.
Right. There's a lot to it, so that I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of like Karen wrote in the first slide, like, nobody's ever done this before, right? So I feel like, we're here so-called presenting to you, but I have so many questions myself,
Right?
Because I'm just thinking, well, how do you engage a 5-year-old?
Well, and that's the thing is it, I mean, yeah, that's the other part of it, is he's a kindergarten student. So.
Right. Developmentally, how engaged can he be? Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I know even my 12-year-old doesn't like to stay in front of the computer and talking to his grandmother very long. It's like, yep, done, going off to do something else,
Yeah.
So my suggestion, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say, one of my close friends is a kindergarten teacher, and he keeps saying, all I ever do is see pictures, it becomes, hey, look, do you see my cat? And then, look, oh, I'm going to go get a snack, and they're wandering all around, and
amazing.
They're 5. They're doing exactly what we would expect them to be doing.
And my suggestion has been, okay, well, maybe we need to step back and say, is he cooking with you?
Yeah.
Is he going outside, and are you counting steps as you walk up the stairs? Are you singing your alphabet? Are you, like, just make it fun? Like,
providing those resources for the family to facilitate it in the setting, in the home setting.
Right.
How long, Allison, how long are your Zoom meetings with the student?
Generally, I've been trying to do something that's more like engaging for, 10, 15 minutes. And then I let them just, it's kind of free, although I don't know if that's.
So with this one boy that you're mentioning, it might be helpful if you did a private Zoom meeting with him, literally just 5 minutes.
Right.
And have him complete one basic task.
Right. That's usually,
and have it set up with the parent beforehand that when he completes that preferred task or whatever that task is, that parent gives that immediate feedback and praise, and slowly build on it that way. Because I think you're right. I think the biggest difficulty for students with autism is this disconnect between the electronic world. We're seeing people on TV, but I know you from a classroom. How can you be here now?
Right.
Well, and there was one day that I dropped some things off at his house, and then 2 hours later I was on the computer. So it was like,
so I would just,
very confusing. Yep.
Yeah, I would just do like really just one thing brief every day and just build on that. And maybe it ends up being 7 minutes after a couple of weeks.
We had been doing, it was read with me, count with me, do the little calendar.
Yeah.
And that's where we had started, and that's where we're continuing to do. And usually I let him drive it enough so that I'm like, do you want to read another story? Like he gets to choose. And when he does those 3 tasks, he's done. If he wants to do more, he can do more. If he doesn't, I'm good with it. I'm like, okay, he's done his tasks. He did his tasks, mom, or, we're all done now. Let me know that you're all done. Like, just try and keep some of those familiar routines, but I don't know.
What other routines are other people using?
I would echo Allison's need for routine, and the thing that we've seen be really successful. I'm most of the day with middle school, but in the afternoons I pop on with our more life skills younger kids. There are kindergartners and first graders both in there, so that's a nice cognitive shift from the morning to the afternoon. But we were a little lucky because we had a really prescriptive program in place. We were using the STAR program ahead of time, and so that has that commonality of language, and so we were able to send a lot of that stuff home. And we're on week 6 of Zooming, so our kids are better at it week 6 than they were week 1. We've gotten up to 15 minutes now in the afternoon. So, and we made it through yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. So it's been Star Wars week because May the 4th was on Monday. So may the 4th be with you. And so yesterday, I'm using a program called Vooks, V-O-O-K-S. I'll put it in the chat in a minute. But I come on, we do our greetings, so we have 4 things. You need to listen to the teacher, eyes on teacher, bottom in chair, feet on floor, hands in lap. And that's language that we had when we were at school. So we go through that language first. Works for some, better than others, works longer for some than it does for others. And then we do the story. We ask some who, what, where, when, why questions, and everybody goes off and bye, see you later. So that whole process takes only about 15, 20 minutes. But at the beginning, it was almost 15 minutes to get to the point where we could get through the 4 eyes on teacher, bottom in chair, feet on floor.
It reminds me a lot of the policies and procedures you have to set up on the first day of school, right?
We dealt with it as a new school rollout. That's actually how we approached it as teachers. We dealt with it as, okay, we're starting completely over again. What would you do the very first day? And we have pretty good attendance. I mean, switching back to my middle school brain, I had 100% attendance at almost all of their Zooms today, and they have between 5 and 7 Zooms a day.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
We're running our bell schedule.
For middle school, right? Yeah.
That's our middle schoolers. Yeah, we're running our bell schedule. So we're doing homeroom, then they're going off to check in with a special, then they're coming back to math, then they're going off for a while on their own, coming back to ELA, going off for a while on their own, or going to band, chorus, or Spanish if they're in those classes, and then coming back, and once a week they go to science at 1:45. Once a week they go to social studies at 1:45, and 3 times a week I'm open just in my room for anybody for office hours to drop by.
Has anybody with that schedule, because I know a lot of schools in Maine are doing that, at least up in Orono we are, my middle schoolers and high schoolers are doing the same. Has anybody seen those kids who generally are walking through the hall with their, trapper keepers bleeding, has anybody found those kids with those executive functioning issues just not being able to shift with the organization between, online and not, or has it been easier? Because I know a lot of schools have used Google Classroom already, you know, those
Right.
type of organization systems in Google Classroom. So I'm just curious to see what you're all seeing. Has it complicated things, or has it made it smoother for the transition?
Both.
I think part of, at least at the middle school that I work at, there's two types of situations. You know, kids at the middle school are all transitioning and trying to learn executive skills. Most of them don't have them, even though we all expect them to.
Right.
So what I've noticed is the students that are successful with the Google Classroom, it depends, just as when we're in a brick and mortar school, on how organized the teacher is and how well their executive skills are developed. Because when you post something on Google Classroom and you reduce the friction, meaning you reduce the amount of things that students have to do on their own. So when you say that you need to go here, you actually embed the link in the instructions, and things are bulleted, and you audio tape your instructions. When you make it accessible for all students and very easy, then they can proceed through it. The teachers that tend to struggle with those skills typically in the brick and mortar setting, I've noticed, have also struggled, you know, on the Google Classroom platform, and then we end up struggling with the students as well. And so we've had to provide some kind of one-on-one support for the teachers as well as the students to help all the students in the classroom, because other kids that really had great organizational skills with their notebooks in their 3-ring binders and all the files, now they don't have that paper and it's all on the computer. And if the structure isn't being provided for them because it wasn't set up prior to March when we left school, they're at a loss. So we've had to do a lot of kind of work with the teachers, and that's filtered down to the students.
And I feel like this kind of goes back to the sort of whole topic for today, which is supporting the parents, because of course they're the ones that are in the home with the children all day. So you know, you're talking about working with helping the teachers to make it more organized so that they can make it more organized for the kids. But certainly I'm sure, my guess, and I'm only working with, you know, one family right now, but that there's going to be a difference just based on how the families are able to provide support or not. And I don't know how much you all are working with the families or more just with the teachers and then the kids.
Both, but I think it's different depending on what level you're at. Our parents tend to be much more involved, I would say, 2nd grade and down than above that, which is pretty typically what you would expect. But I have 3rd graders that are getting themselves on Google Meets, that are getting themselves to classes, that they're still struggling. You know, they come in looking like one of the Lost Boys from Peter Pan, but they're there, and they're engaging, and, you know, bless them for that. And so they, just like kids always do, they have adapted a bit more easily than the adults in the room. And so they are doing a great job. Our little school had a fort night last night for pre-K to 2. They all built forts and they zoomed into each other's.
I thought you meant the video game.
Me too.
And then, yeah, no, not Fortnite. Fortnite. But that is why they called it that, because it was Fortnite.
Yeah.
And so they all zoomed together because what they were missing was seeing each other. They were seeing, like, the pre-Kers were seeing all of the pre-Kers because they were zooming together. The kindergartners were seeing the kindergartners because they were zooming together, but they weren't getting to see each other. And so the really sweet thing that happened with them being able to go to different breakout rooms. So the teachers from the primary wing all held a breakout room. So they went to one Zoom together, all held breakout rooms, and then each teacher read a story from their fort, and you could go from room to room to room while that was happening. And so they got to see their friends. And it was,
that's so cool.
it's on the VZ Community School Facebook page if you want to look at some of the pictures, but at least I think they put the pictures up, but it was really sweet. Our reading recovery teacher, who is also our 6th grade language teacher, showed a picture of herself. She had done her kitchen table and she wound Christmas lights up around the legs of the tables. But it seems to us like that's more of what they're missing.
Yeah, the whimsy.
It's the I had a sixth grader so excited to see a seventh grader when I had my office hours this week, and they both showed up at the same time. And that's all he wanted to do. The sixth grader could no longer focus and pay attention because his friend was there, and he hadn't seen his friend since March 13th. And why wouldn't I just let him talk to his friend?
Yeah.
So I just let him talk to his friend.
I have to introduce a guest that we have from the other side of East Coast. Deanna Morales is here. I don't know if you know her. She's a good friend of mine. Hi, Deanna. You can unmute yourself and speak.
So it's not a town called Florida in Maine.
No.
No.
We have, everything else.
And just so you know that I'm from the real, I'm really south, Miami Beach. That's the beach I go to.
That's great.
We're there.
Nice background.
That's awesome. But your daughter's coming up to the Northeast, isn't she?
My daughter lives in Medford, Massachusetts.
Ah, cool. I'm from Massachusetts originally. I know exactly where you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. She born and raised in Miami.
Is she going to Tufts, or why is she going to Medford?
She graduated from Florida State and followed a boy to Boston. And it didn't work out, but she loved Boston.
So that worked out.
And now she met another young man who, we're absolutely in love with. So hopefully.
Awesome. Good. Because I see you shared something about what you shared with families in Florida. That's why I already downloaded it. And I thought, Florida, Maine. Where is that?
No, right, because we have Paris, Maine.
Poland, China.
Belfast.
In my day job, I work for the Florida Inclusion Network. And these are some of what we call products that we put out. And as soon as we went to virtual teaching, the Florida Inclusion Network created these flyers in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
And if you go on that website, there's all sorts of different things, folios and things on inclusion that we put out. But this is the one, I think this is my favorite, because it's tips for parents on how to set up a learning environment for their children in the home.
Looks great.
Fantastic. Now, Helen, you said the family that you're working with, English is not their first language.
Right. So that's got that extra layer of challenge.
Yeah. And what is are you challenged to find interpretations?
Oh, I'm the interpreter. It's a Chinese family.
Oh, it's Chinese. Okay. You're all set then.
But they have been challenged, right? The school district was challenged before we kind of connected or whatever. So I feel like that's an interesting, I'm sure that's an issue in other parts of the state as well.
Absolutely. Definitely down in Lewiston, area, I'm sure.
Yep. And one question I actually was going to ask you all, and it's kind of related to this, is extended school year services. I don't know if anybody has been talking about that with your families and what people are interested in, because, with this family that I'm working with, that's a question, like, what will it look like, and will it be accessible, especially given the language barrier, but language barrier or not, is that something that your schools?
I'm going to defer to the special ed directors on this, Deborah, Jean, and Beth. What's happening?
Yeah.
Well, we just had a meeting with my ed techs and special ed teachers today. We are planning for 3 different scenarios. Mm-hmm. One is that we're 100% remote. We are providing ESY services for all students who are identified for special education, regardless if they were identified through the IEP process for extended school year services, because of, this is the language, COVID interrupted services and COVID's impact and support and service needs. So that's one option. The other one is maybe the possibility that we are going to be doing it 100% remote, or we may be doing it part remote, part face-to-face, depending what guidance we get by that time in the calendar. And the third option is, and I said earlier, some miracle drops down from the sky and we're able to bring all of our kids back, then we would do 100% face-to-face. So we're planning all three possibilities.
It's quite the mental gymnastics.
Yeah, it is. But I think it's the right thing to do for kids given this. And we've had a number of IEP meetings. We've proposed it ESY to parents we would never have even considered proposing it to, and they have been very receptive to it. So we're hoping that it's going to reduce any regression and help with some of the retention of those skills that we've been working on in their IEPs anyway. So that's what we're doing. I don't know what Norlene or Beth are doing.
Well, I kind of had a question. Right now, I think in terms of ESY, we're looking at the possibilities that you just talked about, you know, and what is going to happen this summer and what's going to happen in September, you know, so it's a one day at a time thing. But I think the thing that's more worrisome to me is, what about the kids that are not connecting through the internet? And we just have a little tiny place up here. And there are so many ways we could get these kids connected. I have one family whose mother will not allow the child to be on the internet. I have another family with 3 children who have a child that's come back from a special purpose private school who is a predator, and DHHS will not allow the internet. I mean, and so then you have this huge worry, you know. So we've done a lot of wonderful fun things with the internet. We have a weekly all school meeting with the kids, and today was superhero day and we all get online. I have kids messaging me on kids messenger app at home on Sunday night, you know. So it's you know, we've really been able to feel comfortable about what we're doing for those kids that we can connect with through the internet. But the other kids are getting packets. And one thing I do is the mom of the family that I mentioned with the child from the special purpose school, she puts videos for me on Messenger, on my personal messenger between her and I, so that I can watch the little guy do his work. But he's one of the kids I need to be with the most. So what are, you know, Terry, you say 100% of the kids, and I'm thinking, really? In BC, 100% of those kids are online, and I'm like, what, you know?
Well, but we have a little bit of a different situation because we were a one-to-one school to start with. Every kid in our school had a device of some kind already.
Yeah, Maine's lucky that way.
So we sort of had a leg up rather than trying to find things. We did have some families that didn't have. I have horrible internet connection. I live in city Bangor, and 3, maybe 8. So I have 7 Zooms, 8 Zooms a day. I would say 3 or 4 times per Zoom, I get that warning that says your internet connection is unstable because Spectrum is awesome.
Yeah.
So I do think that, but we have those parents too. I was just talking about my middle school kids when I talked about the 100%. We also have families that I phone call, that I sit over the phone with, that we do seesaw with, that we send videos to them about how to do it, and they send videos back about them doing it. But some kids we got on packets because parents have said, I can't do this.
Right.
I can't manage it. I can't handle it. Please, please just send me a packet.
Right.
I'll get them to do their work. I will. I'm not against them doing their work. I just can't manage this.
It's impossible to talk about academic or behavioral supports without talking about that access issue, you know. And I know years ago, probably 16 years ago, when when my daughter was born, we had these little things that would plug into the side of your computer, and it was basically like a little wireless antenna. Do you remember those? And I was talking to some school board members the other day, and they said that they got like a packet of them in the school office, you know, but they were hanging on to them because they didn't think anybody needed them. And I thought, just, you know, make that available. Don't just hang on to them, you know, because I think people up in, you know, Beth, where you are, and anybody who doesn't have access could still use that. You know, if we've got devices that we're getting funding for, put them on the school bus.
Well, I gave some of the kids their iPads. That's all there is to it. And I have a couple Chromebooks, but no hotspots yet from the department. You know, so so we're just doing our best. And I just, you know, I am mostly worried about those children that are just home and their moms and dads are trying to work with them on all that paperwork. And it is hard teaching your kid at home.
Right.
I don't know how
about the parents who aren't home.
Right.
Parents
And
who have to both leave the house to work because they're essential workers, and the kids are running the show.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, talk about the Lost Boys, you know, Tara. It's like, it's just, you know, feral children, you know, just
They are, and it's awesome. But I think we have to meet the parents. We have to meet the parents where they are too, and don't want to show anybody. You know what? If this is too much for you, I would much rather you tell me it's too much for you than act like everything's okay and give me the thumbs up and tell me, all right, okay, super, keep sending me that stuff when you have no intention of having anybody do it. You know, if
so
you
important.
one piece of paper and it'll get done and I can see it, or you can send me a picture of something the kid built outside, or you went for a walk and you're sending me a video of it.
Right.
I would much rather do something that they can engage in than have all the best technology in the world that they never even look at.
Right. It's important to communicate that to parents, that even if they're feeling overwhelmed, to read the kids, you know, like Allison's student that she was talking about, if they're overwhelmed and they can't stay focused, take a break. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You know, give yourself some space and permission as parents, you know, the same space and permission that we're giving our students to just step away for a little bit and not feel like you have to do everything.
I told that family, I said, your relationship with your child is more important than any paperwork I give you or any Zoom meeting we come to or anything like that. I said, I don't want you to ruin your relationship over fighting him to do X, Y, Z, PDQ. Like you got to be okay at the end of the day together.
Right.
And if you end up just, you know, she tells me they lay in bed and count, you know, by tens or by twos or what have you. And I'm like, that is perfect. Like, you don't have to do it with me on a Zoom meeting. You can do it on your own. Like, I think that it probably the Zoom meeting is as much for her as it is for him, to be honest. So, yeah.
Speaking of Zoom burnout.
Yeah.
I just want to be mindful of everybody's Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I want to sincerely thank Karen and Helen for leading this discussion.
Very nice.
You know, your expertise and the ideas that you brought to us, you know, is awesome. And I like those of you who have been consistently coming to these Friday, you know, virtual teacher lounges. It's really wonderful to connect with all of you, you know, and to know that we're not in this alone and we're all figuring it out together. Next week, we'll have another one at 3:00, not noon. I apologize for the Zoom bombing. It's always Friday at 3. That's when we're going to be meeting. So
Thanks, Sarah.
enjoy your
Thank you for
weekend.
organizing. And I put these slides in the chat, so if anybody wants them, they can just
Thank you.
access them there.
Thank you. Is it okay if I share them as a file with the membership? And
Absolutely, yeah. Did you get them from here, or do you need me to send them to you?
I have them.
I think you emailed yesterday, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Karen and Helen. Those were great.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye. Nice weekend.
Good
Bye,
to see you.
Steve.
Good weekend.
Here, hi, Darlene. Hi.
Bye.
It's nice to see everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.